They called him defender of the faith. They called him supreme head of the church. But in the end, history called him something else: monster. Henry VIII was not merely a king. He was a force of nature, roaring, hungering, devouring everything in his path. Wives, friends, faith, and even his own flesh. He changed England forever, tearing it from the hands of Rome and drowning it in the blood of saints and lovers alike. He was a lover turned executioner, a prince turned tyrant, a god in his own eyes who, in his final days, became a bloated wreck of rot and madness. His death was not a peaceful fading of candlelight. It was a grotesque implosion, a body so diseased and swollen it burst open like a cursed fruit. This is not a tale of glory. It is a descent into horror. This is the story of how a golden boy became a living corpse. This is the story of Henry VIII, the king who died screaming. In the annals of history, few monarchs stand as tall and fall as tragically as Henry VIII, King of England, son of a conqueror, father to queens and martyrs, and the butcher of both love and God. He was a man of insatiable appetites, for power, for women, for validation from heaven itself. Yet he would not die gloriously in battle like Alexander, nor in grace like Solomon. No, the man who tore apart a church, burned saints, and shattered hearts would die in filth, rotting slowly from the inside, his body a crumbling monument to his sins. A king who once danced and jousted became a bloated beast trapped in a palace of pain. This is the story of Henry VIII, the tyrant who ruled through fear, married 6 women, and betrayed almost every soul who ever loved him. This is the tale of his rise, his ruin, and the terrible death that history refused to forget. Born on a frosty June day in 1491, Henry Tudor was the second son of Henry VII. He was not meant to be king. That honor belonged to his elder brother, Arthur. But fate, that sly reaper, had other plans. In 1502, Arthur died mysteriously at the age of 15, and the crown shifted to young Henry. At 18, he inherited the throne. Tall, athletic, and handsome, Henry VIII was a golden prince, the very picture of chivalric perfection. He played the lute, composed poetry, and bested knights in jousting tournaments. The court adored him. The people sang his name. The chroniclers of the day described him as a young Apollo, full of vigor, grace, and charm. He married Catherine of Aragon, his dead brother's widow, in a union meant to seal England's alliance with Spain. She was graceful, pious, and intelligent. For years, their marriage appeared blessed. Yet Henry, for all his early virtue, bore one consuming flaw: the desire for a male heir. Catherine bore him children, but only one survived, Mary. One boy after another died in infancy or stillbirth. Henry, increasingly paranoid, believed he was cursed. Was it not a sin, after all, to marry his brother's wife? Had God turned against him? At first, Henry was a devout Catholic. He wrote against Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation, earning the title Defender of the Faith from the Pope. But the seeds of rebellion had been sown. Pride, power, and lust began to unravel his religious loyalty. His wandering eyes soon fell upon Anne Boleyn, a sharp-tongued lady of the court with dark eyes and ambition in her veins. She refused to be a mistress. She would be queen or nothing. To possess her, Henry did the unthinkable. He sought an annulment from Catherine, but Pope Clement VII refused. Catherine, after all, was the aunt of the powerful Emperor Charles V. The papacy could not afford to insult him. In fury, Henry broke from Rome. He established the Church of England, declaring himself its supreme head. England wept as the monasteries were closed, their riches seized. Priests who resisted were hung, drawn, and quartered. Monks were burned. Martyrs were made. The spiritual heart of England was ripped out and replaced with royal tyranny. In 1533, he married Anne Boleyn. She gave birth not to the long-awaited prince, but to another daughter, Elizabeth. Henry was bitterly disappointed. The court murmured, and Anne's enemies multiplied. Anne's charm soon curdled into scorn. She mocked Henry's impotence, grew jealous, and surrounded herself with enemies. In 1536, Henry ordered her arrest. She was accused of adultery, incest, and treason, charges likely fabricated. On a May morning, Anne was beheaded at the Tower of London, her head struck cleanly by a French swordsman. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave. Her final prayer was not for herself, but for England. The same week Anne died, Henry married Jane Seymour. She was quiet, meek, and submissive, the opposite of Anne. At last, in 1537, she bore him a son, Edward, but her triumph was short-lived. She died days later from childbirth complications. Henry, for once, grieved sincerely. Jane would be the only wife buried beside him, but grief did not cleanse his soul. The land was restless. Pilgrimages of protest erupted across the north. One such rebellion, the Pilgrimage of Grace, was crushed with merciless force. Hundreds were executed. The heads of noblemen and monks rotted on pikes. He trusted no one. Even his closest advisor, Sir Thomas More, whom he once called friend, was executed for refusing to recognize his supremacy over the church. More, a scholar and saint, went to the scaffold with calm dignity. Henry, meanwhile, raged like a madman. By now, Henry's health began to decline. A jousting accident in 1536 left him unconscious for 2 hours. His leg was crushed, the wound refusing to heal. It ulcerated and festered. The once vigorous king grew obese and irritable. His appetite was legendary. He consumed meat and wine in monstrous quantities. He married again, and of Cleves, a German princess whose painted portrait had deceived him. Upon meeting her in person, he declared her a Flanders mare and annulled the marriage after 6 months. Next came Catherine Howard, barely 17 while he was nearing 50. She was lively and flirtatious, but secrets from her past caught up with her. She had once been involved with other men. When Henry found out, he flew into a rage. In 1542, she was beheaded, accused of treason. "I die a queen, but I would rather have died the wife of Culpeper," she whispered before the axe fell. Henry wept, but not for love, rather for betrayal, for humiliation. He was now monstrously fat, unable to walk without aid. His legs oozed pus. The smell around him became unbearable. His courtiers used dried flowers and oranges to mask it. They feared his wrath, his gaze, his breath. In 1543, Henry married one final time, Catherine Parr, a wise and tactful widow. She nursed his decaying body and soothed his temper. She also reconnected him with his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, restoring them to the line of succession. But the king was dying. Slowly, horribly, his ulcerated leg became his tormentor, splitting open with every step. His massive weight, over 350 pounds, made simple movement agony. He could no longer climb stairs. His courtiers built elaborate systems of pulleys and ramps to move him. He became paranoid, executing noblemen and friends alike. In 1546, he ordered the death of Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, one of England's finest poets. Even Thomas Cromwell, the man who secured his divorce and destroyed the monasteries, was not spared. He too was executed without trial. As death drew near, Henry became increasingly incoherent. He screamed at shadows. He barked orders to long-dead soldiers. The palace was cold, damp, and stank of rot. He shuffled through the halls like a ghost of his former self. January 1547. Henry lay in Whitehall Palace, his body a grotesque wreckage of what it once had been. He was 55 but looked much older. His face was swollen, his skin pale and blistered, his eyes glassy with fever. The leg ulcer had worsened. Gangrene had set in. His doctors attempted to lance the wound, but the infection had already poisoned his blood. His entire lower body was necrotic. The room stank so badly that attendants had to rotate in shifts, unable to bear it for long. He could barely speak. His breath was labored. His bowels had ceased functioning properly. He oozed blood and pus from open sores. At night, he moaned and cried out, haunted by the ghosts of the women he had destroyed. Catherine and Jane and young Catherine Howard. His last words were mumbled prayers. He refused to confess. He claimed he had been right in all things, that God had made him king and would not judge him as men do. Then came the final agony. His abdomen swelled grotesquely. His bloated body became a pressurized chamber of rot. On the final day, his body, overwhelmed by internal gases, burst open in the night. The floor of his chamber was slick with blood and bile. His servants, horrified, refused to enter. A king had died, but not with dignity. Henry VIII was buried in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, beside Jane Seymour. His tomb is modest. No grand statue, no golden crown, just a simple stone. But England remembered, and not fondly. He left behind a broken realm, rich in gold, yet poor in soul. His only son, Edward VI, would die young. His daughter Mary would burn Protestants at the stake. His daughter Elizabeth would restore order, but never marry, perhaps haunted by her father's shadow. Henry's 6 wives became symbols of a man who could never love without destroying. His church, born from lust and pride, would go on to divide a continent. The man who defied the Pope, who executed saints, who murdered wives and crushed dissenters, died not as a lion, but as a rotting carcass of arrogance and disease. Some say his death was a curse, that God repaid him for every innocent life he took, that the blood of Anne Boleyn cried from the ground, that the ghost of Catherine Howard danced in his dreams, holding her severed head in her hands. Perhaps Henry himself feared this, for in his final days he asked no priests to absolve him. He saw no bishops. He begged no forgiveness, only silence, as if the weight of his sins had crushed even his prayers. History does not remember Henry VIII as a great king. It remembers him as a cautionary tale, a man who had everything and destroyed it, a golden prince who turned to rust, and in death, he reeked of the very filth he had spilled across a nation. And so Henry VIII, once a radiant prince, once the terror of kings and popes, died not with a crown upon his head, but with rot in his veins and silence in his soul. His story is not one of triumph, but of warning, that power, unchecked, will always end in darkness. Thank you for walking with me through the twisted corridors of Tudor history. If you enjoyed this tale of blood, betrayal, and the price of power, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories from the forgotten corners of the past. Until next time, stay curious and beware the cost of a crown.